edition of the Mindset Game podcast, and I'm your host, James Roberts. Before we get started with this week's show, first off, let me take this opportunity to welcome back the regular listeners, and if this is your first time listening to the show, I hope you enjoy this episode and decide to subscribe to the show. And on today's show, I've got Caradh O'Donovan. Caradh is a champion kickboxer who has been winning World and European Kickboxing medals for the past 2 decades. More recently, she's turned her hand at karate, and within 3 months she's become senior national champion and a member of the Karate Island squad. So welcome onto the show, Caradh.
Thanks very much.
So before we delve more into the episode, can you talk to us about why you got into martial arts in the first place?
Yeah, I started when I was 12, but I actually started kickboxing because I wanted to play football in my local club, and at the time they weren't taking any girls, so that didn't work out for me. And then I went down to my local kickboxing club, and once I started, I fell in love with it, and that's kind of how I stuck at it from there.
And then obviously later on, I read in your bio on your website that you were diagnosed with Crohn's. How do you think that has had an impact on your career?
It kind of, it's hindered it a lot because I had Crohn's disease for years without realizing that I had it. And I would have had a lot of kind of effects of that, and even injuries with my joints and that, which I thought were from overtraining. I now see that it was actually part of this disease. So probably because I ignored the symptoms for so long, it cost me an awful lot of titles and it cost me a lot of medals. But at the same time, since I've been diagnosed, really I've just kind of learned to manage it, and it's kind of made me feel a little bit kind of prouder of everything that I've achieved, that I've been able to do it whilst managing this. So in one way you could look at it negatively and say, oh well, it cost me so much and it's not fair, and feeling sorry for myself. But now it's kind of nice to be able to show other people that have it, maybe younger people, that you can still do everything that you want to do. You just need to make a few adjustments.
And then also, if we go a bit further than that, why do you think at the elite level it's got that stigmatization associated with it?
I guess the disease itself is not really an attractive one, so people don't really talk about their bowel movements a lot, so it's not something that you discuss regularly. So from that point, when I first found out, I didn't want to talk about it at all. I just wanted to pretend that it didn't exist. But once people, like 1 or 2 competitors that I would have been competing against, they found out that I had this, and of course they used it to their advantage. And one of the biggest triggers for me with this disease is stress. So if I get particularly stressed out or anxious about something, it flares up and I get really sick. And there's just, unfortunately, most people in sport, I'd say 99% of people are really nice and supportive, but there's always 1 or 2 that think, oh, there's an opportunity to capitalize on. And I got an awful lot of abuse for it, which triggered, put me under a lot of stress, and then triggered flare-ups, and I got so sick. So that's kind of the stigma that I found in competition, that there's 1 or 2 kind of competitors that just don't care how they win. They just see an opportunity. And then the other side of it too is you do a lot of traveling when you're competing. So travel when you need access to bathrooms at any point can be difficult. And like, I was at a European Championships in Greece, I think a couple of years ago, and the facilities were terrible. They had 1 toilet between 2,000 competitors. So when you need to kind of go, you can't really, there's nothing really for you to do. And the people organising the competitions, they just didn't understand and really didn't care. So those are kind of some of the reasons that I've spoken out a little bit about it, to try and raise awareness about it. And that's kind of some of the issues and challenges that I've come up against.
And then since you've kind of gone over to karate, obviously you've got aspirations to compete in Tokyo now. Do you think the changeover has helped have a new lease of life, so to speak?
Yeah, definitely. I probably had gotten everything that I wanted to get out of the kickboxing done, probably even a few years ago, when I was still just there kind of competing, and I didn't really have maybe as much motivation, or I wasn't feeling maybe as challenged to keep training. So when I started the new sport, I decided just I'd see if it goes well, if I liked it. And I actually I love it. It's one of the best sports I've ever done. It's not too different from kickboxing, so that it's not going to take me a long time to catch up. So yeah, it's completely fresh. It's new. It's challenging. It's tough going back in at the bottom. You're used to winning things and coming home from international events with no medals. It's kind of hard to kind of deal with at the start, but it's nice to have a challenge where you're like it's not easy and you can build on goals and stuff like that. So yeah, it feels like completely fresh and exciting and new. So it's I'm just kind of I have no regrets now about leaving kickboxing. I'm just kind of happy to leave it behind and draw a line under it.
But Mom, some might say, why did you not possibly go into Taekwondo, for example?
Yeah, a few people have said that to me. I actually tried Taekwondo after the London Olympics, and they were trying to do like a talent um, identification or a crossover then. And I just tried it for about 6 months and I just didn't like it. It wasn't, for whatever reason, it's nothing to do with, the sport is fine, but for me, it just wasn't a match. The equipment kept malfunctioning on me in the middle of the competition. So obviously, if that happens, and it's all based on electronic scoring, and that just was frustrating. But yeah, I just didn't have the passion for it at all, and just between work and everything at the same time, I decided not to go for that. And then obviously at that time karate wasn't an Olympic sport, but after Rio they announced that it was going to be in Tokyo, so I decided it was a little bit more similar to kind of my style of fighting, and I just enjoy it a lot more.
And can you explain to the listeners how are the two sports of kickboxing and karate that similar?
Um, well, the style of kickboxing that I would have done is called point fighting, and it's quite similar. So the whole objective is to score points, but it's a stop start. So you have to be the first person to score a point, and if the majority of referees award you a point, the centre referee will call time, and the fight stops, and you're awarded your point, and it starts over again. So it's not the same as the kickboxing that you see in the ring, where it's just continuous, um, kind of continuous fighting, and you kind of build up points. So from that point of view, it's quite similar. So karate is the same. It's about being the first person to score a point, and then it stops and starts again. The size of the area, the fighting area is the same. A lot of the tactics will be similar. So the only real differences are the techniques and the level of contact that you're allowed to hit with. So that was one of the kind of areas I've struggled with, is not hitting so hard. But it's yeah. So there's a lot of similarities between the style of kickboxing I've done and the style of karate. So yeah.
Yeah, but wouldn't you say from a competitive standpoint, if you do hit the person harder, are they not likely to not end the bout, but become not injured, but so to speak, but have to retire as a result of it? So wouldn't you say it is a good thing to be able to hit harder?
Um, Possibly. I mean, that's kind of that would have been one of my strengths coming into this sport. So in kickboxing, that would have been one of the biggest assets I had, is that I hit hard, especially for the weight category that I'm in. But it's just, I guess the rules in karate is just a little bit different. It's being able to control your technique and throwing a technique with it's I guess the whole idea behind it is that if you had to hit hard, you would be able to, but it's being able to control it for more demonstration purposes. So yeah, I mean, if it was up to me, I'd be allowed just hit as hard as I want. But at the same time, I've kind of learned to respect and see the reasons behind the control in the sport. So it's much more technical, and I guess it's in some ways it can be nicer to watch. But at the same time, it's quite difficult to learn how to control your punches and your kicks. So yeah, it's a challenge.
But if we go back to the beginning now, Cara, do you think from a mindset perspective, martial arts has instilled within you that essence of respect and all that comes with it? Obviously I did martial arts when I was a bit younger as well. So I've got a little bit of an essence of what it brings to you, obviously discipline and whatnot. Do you think that is a mindset that maybe kids are missing? They should maybe try martial arts to control their anger and things of that nature?
Yeah, it's definitely a part of it that I really admire and respect in sport. I think karate is more into that kind of respect than kickboxing would have been, and it's one of the sides of the sport that I love. I mean, the athletes that you're against are very respectful, and sometimes that, like when I was in kickboxing, sometimes that can be forgotten about. But yeah, it's something that I kind of really enjoy, that side of martial arts, for doing it for the last kind of 20 years. But it's really good for, like, I mean, like all sports, but I think martial arts is a good way of developing your kind of your confidence, just respect for other people, all those kind of things. And yeah, that is kind of the side of martial arts that I like, and it's nice to still see it being part of it. I know it's starting to be lost in other sides of martial arts, maybe MMA, or some of them are losing it a little bit. But yeah, it's nice to see it's still there.
And do you think, obviously, you were instilled when you were younger, you were told, obviously, you're learning this in the dojo, and you're not told to, well, you were told in the first instance, this is not to go out of this room to use like in the street. Do you think, for in your opinion, uh, kids possibly nowadays they kind of say, oh, well, he's just telling us that to show that we show him respect, but then kids are then taking it outside and using it.
I don't think so. I think any club that I've been part of, they've been very strict on that. If anybody has ever used what they've learned in the club kind of outside on a Saturday night after a club, they've been fairly quickly told to leave the club. And obviously, if there's kind of police or guards involved in it, that's being followed up on as well. So I do think it's important that you say that. I mean, I go into schools and do demonstration with kids, and I always try and make a point of saying, don't go out to the playground now in 10 minutes and start punching your friends. So you kind of talk about the safety equipment side of it, and the fact that you have to practice it in kind of a safe environment. But yeah, I mean, I've never really come up against many people that are using it outside of the club, and any of the instructors or coaches that I've worked with over the years, and if anyone has kind of caused trouble with that, they've been fairly quick to get rid of them, and you do get expelled out of clubs over it. So to me, that's like not the essence of martial arts. If you're there to do it as a sport, and if you're using it outside of it, you don't deserve to be in the club at all.
And you could probably go a step further than that, Cara, and say if you've learnt it in a school environment and you've only used it for the first time, you're not only putting the other person at risk if you did it, you're also putting yourself at risk of getting injured as well.
Yeah, like absolutely. I mean, if you've only done one or two kickboxing sessions or karate sessions, you really don't know what you're doing. And if you decide then you're an expert and start going out and pick on the wrong person, you're probably going to get hurt. So it's important to realize your limits and know that you might not be an expert in this area. And I mean, one of the things that when as you do get a little bit better and as you do become an expert in the sport, like the the whole idea behind it is that you learn how to avoid any conflict and walk away before it ever escalates into anything physical. So that'd be the number kind of one basis of all self-defense, is how to avoid getting in a confrontation at all costs. And then obviously if it does come to that you are able to protect yourself. So that's the one side of it that is good, that especially for young girls, that if they are ever attacked or anything like that, that you do have a little bit of self-defense background. So
And then now we go probably back onto the sports side of things and look at you looking towards going towards Tokyo and competing at the Olympics. Did you ever think that you would, in your wildest dreams, have that opportunity?
um to be honest, I did. Since I started kind of kickboxing, or maybe when I was a teenager, there's always been talk that, oh, kickboxing will get into the Olympics. So in the back of my mind, that was something that I had always hoped for, or always believed might actually happen. As it turned out, that didn't happen. I don't know the whole issues or how it actually becomes an Olympic sport. As a kid, you kind of believe what you're hearing from the people that are running the sport. So in my head during that time, I thought, yeah, I'm actually going to get to go to Olympics here. But as I was getting a bit older, I started to get a bit more realistic and realize, oh, this isn't going to happen here. So then once karate got announced, and I started looking at a few videos, and I thought, oh, geez, you know, I can actually do that. That's not too dissimilar from what I'm doing. So in one way, like, it's always been in the back of my mind as a possibility. But now, after doing the sport for quite a few months and having a bit of success at it, it's starting to become far more realistic now. And I fought some of the best fighters in the world already, and I'm not that far off. So it's becoming much more of a reality. I still have 2.5 years, or a little bit kind of less than that, to even get better and to try and beat these girls. So yeah, like, at the minute now, it's become much more realistic.
And then obviously, well, as an athlete, well, fortunately retired, so I don't have to worry about things like that. But obviously, 2 years is a lifetime in that time period. But what are your aspirations probably going forward, maybe beyond Tokyo?
Um, I haven't really kind of thought beyond that for, you know, for in terms of being an athlete or still competing. Um, who knows what might happen after that? Maybe if they say kickboxing is going to be in the Paris 2024, I'll take a look back. But realistically speaking, I'd say in the next couple of years, I'll probably retire from sport. Like, I'm 33 now, so you're probably, you know, when you're going into your kind of mid to late 30s, your body starts to stop working maybe as well as it did in your 20s. So beyond that, I'm not too sure, but realistically speaking, it's probably not going to be something that I continue on as an athlete at that level.
Would you ever consider going into coaching, or is that not in your remit?
Um, I might do. It's not really something that I've given much kind of focus to at the minute. It's very hard. I know some people that are doing some coaching and being an athlete at the same time, but I find it's very hard to do both, because you need to be really quite selfishly absorbed in yourself when you're being an athlete and not looking after 20 or 30 different athletes. So at the minute, it's just not something I've given any time to, but I might do it. I mean, I have a background in sports psychology as well, so that's kind of another opportunity or kind of avenue that I might go back into, because that's kind of something that's really interesting to me. And then I do some athlete mentoring as well, so maybe I'll just continue with a bit more of that. But God, I haven't really given much. I'll probably panic in about 2.5, 3 years time and think, oh God, what am I going to do? But I'm sure I'll figure that out when the time comes.
And you bring up there, Cara, your background with sports psychology. Have you, during your career, utilized some of the techniques that you've learned?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the reasons I opted to do a master's in sports psychology, it's about 10 years ago now. And the biggest kind of reason I did that was I struggled massively with my own kind of nerves, anxiety, all of that sort of stuff. And I had no idea why or how to control it or how to manage it. So I decided, well, look, there was an opportunity here to do a degree or a master's degree in it. So everything that I learned through that, I've implemented in my own kind of training regime. So I do like a lot of mental skill training every week. It's kind of a big part of my overall training plan. So even stuff like visualization, how I'm setting my goals, all that sort of stuff is a massive part of like my daily training schedule. It's just incorporated into everything.
And now that you do mentoring as well, do you say that to the kids? That is one aspect of sport that they should definitely delve into. Well, obviously, as we know, at the elite level, it's that 1%. Do you say to for them to focus on try and perfect that as early as on as they can?
Yeah, well, I mean, I probably wouldn't get as kind of um, that detailed about it, but I definitely bring in the message that, I mean, you could be the best technically, physically, and really at a high level of sport. There's very little difference technically and physically or tactically between athletes. So, I mean, talking about belief in yourself, all that sort of thing is something, a message that I kind of bring in when I am in schools and talking to younger athletes or younger kids, because no matter what it is, even if it's not sport, no matter what your goals are, if you don't believe in yourself, you haven't really got a hope. You're not giving yourself the best chance. So, like, that's the message that I will give to people starting off, whether it's sport or anything else. is that you have to believe in yourself to even give yourself a chance of achieving goals. And sometimes, you know, don't listen to other people, because a lot of people will be very quick to knock your goals, especially when they're a little bit mad or a little bit more than kind of challenging or not realistic. So sometimes you just have to use that kind of mental side, or kind of, so I guess, sports psychology side of things to get yourself over that last little hurdle.
And do you think, obviously, if we look on the positives of you having Crohn's, do you think having to have overcome that disease and having to live with it has given you that I can't speak, resiliency to kind of look at reevaluate goals and kind of reflect on where you're going within your sporting career?
Yeah, it's definitely starting to help me now, because I would have struggled with maybe believing in myself in certain situations before. But I think when you come up against something like Crohn's disease, and there isn't a lot known about it, but is one of the most difficult things to overcome, and it's still something that I live with every day. But once I've kind of got a little bit of remission, I thought, well, look, if I can fight this and beat this, winning in kickboxing is a breeze, or winning in sport is actually a lot easier. So I don't mean to trivialize the achievements of any of my kind of fellow athletes in the sport, but when you can overcome something like this, it puts everything else into perspective, and it makes you readjust how you look at things as well. So not only do I think it's going to be a little bit less of a challenge, but it's only, you know, it's not life or death anymore. It's a sport, and I can kind of sit back now a bit more and enjoy it and relax a little bit, as much as I'm serious about it. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out, but I'm certainly not going to, it won't work out for lack of trying anyway. I'm going to give it my best shot and have a bit of fun with it as well.
I think I can relate with that, but probably from the retirement standpoint, because I think people are fixated on it's a win at all cost mentality, and you kind of try to instill to kids, well, just go out there and enjoy it first of all, and then depending on how high up you go, then it becomes more serious, because obviously money plays a big part of it. But it's, I would probably say, it's not forgetting why you got into the sport in the first place. Obviously, people continue on into their 30s, some to their 40s, because they haven't lost that youthful enjoyment for that sport. So it comes back to it. It's coming back to that essence of enjoying it. And like you say, it's not. It's at the end of the day, whatever sport it is, it's a game. It's got to have that enjoyment, and it's not going away from that. And I think you're very much at peace with yourself then.
Yeah, definitely. I think it just has to be fun. It has to be something that you enjoy doing every day, because otherwise, I don't think, well, you might reach your goals, but you're not even going to take any enjoyment out of doing it. So if you're struggling every single day, wanting to win that badly, and not enjoying a second of it, like you're just wasting your life away, because to me there's just no satisfaction in that. So the most important thing for me is that every day I get up and I do what I love, and if there's a day I get up and I don't want to do it, I won't do it. But at the minute it's fun, it's challenging, and I think that is the most important thing, as well as, you know, taking it the serious side of it. I mean, if you're obviously going to be an elite athlete, there is certain things that you need to do, but I think at the kind of basis of it all is that it has to be enjoyable, and that even goes for, you know, we say that to 5 or 6 year old kids, but I still think it has to be part of elite sport as well, because sometimes just with all the goals, and especially in sports that are, as you say, money driven, you kind of lose that. So for me, I'm delighted. I'm lucky. I just get to get up and do what I love every day. So it's great.
But Cara, talk to me about the mindset that you go through on the days that obviously every athlete has these, um, maybe less so than others. But when the days that you're, we'll say, in pain, you know, like inflammation and things like that, how do you motivate yourself to be driven to go to training?
Um, for like within reason, I will try and push myself as much as possible. So if I have, like, I mean, one of the most common effects of Crohn's disease is just really bad fatigue. So you're just exhausted, but it's not, you can't sleep. It's not that kind of tiredness. It's just not being able to do anything. So when I can, I'll try and push myself myself. I've completely changed around the work that I do. So I used to work a lot of hours to try and support my sports career, but I had to readjust that. I used to work 50 hours a week. I've had to cut that back massively because I was literally exhausted. So how I manage that now is I work a lot less, and which gives me more time to train and to recover in between sessions as well. But then if there's days that I'm like really sick, I just have to accept that I'm sick and I can't do it. And that was one of the hardest things to come to terms with, is that like I've missed a couple of big competitions over this because I just physically couldn't do them. I was just constantly sick. But at the minute, I'm quite lucky. I've been quite well, so it hasn't been too challenging that way. But you just try and push yourself as much as you can and remind yourself why you're doing what you're doing. But there is obviously going to be times where you just have to accept and just listen to your body and kind of just go with it and deal with missing out on an event if you have to.
And if we come into the issue, obviously funding, is it a hindrance, so to speak, to compete against the likes of, we say the athletes in the UK? Obviously, they're going to be. I'm of the assumption, with karate being an Olympic sport now, they will also be funded. Is it a bit difficult for you to be able to, how would I word this, compete on a level footing?
Yeah, it's always it used to frustrate me a lot, even in kickboxing. Maybe not the UK because it's not an Olympic sport, but there would have been nations that we were competing against that were funded, like Turkey and a lot of the European nations that maybe feel like in 8 years' time it's going to be Olympic sports. So they had pumped in money a long time ago, and that used to frustrate me. But then I just thought, you know what? You don't need it because we were beating these guys anyway, even with their funding. So now I've just accepted that, yeah, there is going to be every other nation, bar Ireland, probably, or one or two small ones that aren't funded. But there's always a way to do it. I mean, I think if you focus all the time on not having enough funding or not having enough this, that you'll just find an excuse to sabotage yourself. So I try not to think about it too much. It would be nice if Sport Ireland came in and said, yeah, we'll fund the sport. I think they're going to regret not doing it because I'm very confident winning a medal, and it's not just me. I think we've got some serious talent in the squad coming through. But at the same time, I don't put all my energy on it. If they decide to come in and fund us next year, that'll be great. But if they don't, I'll find another way to do it. So I just don't give it too much thought. But yeah, I think the GB squad have actually just announced their funding. They've got pretty well funded over the last, I think it's last month he just announced it. So yeah,
Well,
it can be a pain.
well, as you say, Cara, it's nothing you can do about it. It's the higher powers that kind of have to deal with that issue of money, and you you kind of have to get on with it. And I think people on the outside of sports will probably say, well, I think there's that assumption because you're an elite athlete, oh, you must be getting paid or you must be getting some recompense for doing it. It's like, well, not always.
Yeah, no, it's definitely not that way here. And like some sports are funded here, but we're certainly not the only ones over here that aren't funded. There's other sports that wouldn't get the same kind of level of funding. It's going to definitely be a challenge. Some of the competitions we've got later in the year are over in Asia and a few places like that, so that's going to cost quite a bit of money. But I know I'll find a way to do it, and I think maybe it's a little bit naive, I don't know, but I genuinely believe there's a way to win without all the luxuries or without all the funding. Obviously it makes life easier if you have all those things in place, but I think if you really want to do something, you'll find a way to do it.
Well, if you hop back to the UK now, it's only 2018. It's only, see if I get the math right, 22 years ago that funding didn't exist. So they were obviously like they were in the same circumstances as you are, with having a job and trying to train. I'm of that generation that didn't have to balance the two. So I would say I'm probably quite fortunate, and maybe as I reflect on it now, probably that essence of very privileged. I didn't have to have the balance the two. I could concentrate solely on sport. I wouldn't say it was for everybody because if you become fixated and driven only on sport, you can kind of get obsessed with that. So I was probably fortunate enough. I was in education at the same time, so I could kind of balance one off the other. One could kind of relax me, and then I could forget about the other. So I think that worked for me. Okay, it's not for everybody, but I think it's probably the essence of, how would I put it? I can't think of the word. Entitled. It's that we were probably in that generation of entitlement. They know these athletes nowadays, they know no different. So I would probably be a little bit more humble and say, well, if it wasn't for all these past athletes who had to sacrifice and put us in this position, I wouldn't have that luxury of where I was as a career.
Yeah, that's it. Like it's yeah, it is quite new. I mean, obviously in the UK though, it has paid off. Like there's some serious medals have come from it as well. But I actually just even looking at the money that was invested for the Rio Games, and in Ireland, I think we had maybe 2 or 3 medals, but our medals actually cost a hell of a lot more than the GB medals when you broke it down per kind of the investment per medal. So like so sometimes you don't, the money isn't everything. Like so even with GB investing say less per medal, if you take it that way, they're still coming out with an awful lot more success than we are here. So I don't know if that makes a bit of sense, but really where I'm going with it is that it's not something that I'm overly focused on. I think we've wasted a little bit of money over here over the last kind of cycle, so it hasn't paid off even with the investment that they have made. So you can.
Well, I think, like you said earlier in the episode, as an athlete, you are very self-centered, very much determined and egotistically driven on yourself, and you put the blinkers on anyway. So you kind of forget about what goes around on the outside world, so to speak, and kind of focusing on yourself. So I think everything else is an afterthought, probably.
Yeah, but that's it. Like you could spend all your time focusing on everything else, but you do, like, I mean, if you want to be a successful athlete, you do have to be sometimes quite a bit self-absorbed and focus on what you're doing. And the way I look at it is that maybe it's my sport. I'm not saying it'd be the same for every sport. Some sports cost a lot more money than the sport I'm in. So but when I look at what I'm doing, I just 100% believe that there is a way to do it on a budget. And like, I mean, obviously I'm going to need some funding, but I can do fundraising or try and get some sponsorships for that. And it is something that I'm looking for, but it's not going to be the reason that I do or don't qualify. I'll find a way to get there either way.
And my final question for Cara, if you had to summarize this episode that we've been speaking about today into one sentence for people to take away, what would that be?
Oh wow, tough question. I guess just from my own point of view, I think that even if you're going to have challenges or obstacles, there's always going to be a way to achieve whatever you want to do. So I mean, I'd say don't give up on any kind of goals or dreams. Just keep focused on it, and there'll be avenues just open up before you. So that's I guess my summary of it all.
So once again, Cara, thanks for coming on the Mindset Game podcast.
Thanks a million for having me.
My pleasure.
Great stuff.
And before I forget, I would really appreciate it if you would be so kind as to leave a short written review, as it helps to get the podcast more notoriety, and it would be more visible in future to others, and thus helping more people, which my guests and I are all about. Once again, thanks for listening, and I'll catch you next time for another episode of the Mindset Game podcast.